You've seen a woodpecker do this. You probably thought, ouch. You were right to think that and completely wrong about what's actually happening. How many times does it slam its face into a tree per second? Why doesn't its brain turn to mush? Does it ever get headaches? Is there something inside its skull that no other bird has? And why are scientists building helmets based on a backyard bird? The answer isn't tough skull, it's way weirder than that. And the thing protecting its brain isn't even where you'd expect it. Here's what's actually happening. Imagine driving a nail into wood with your face, roughly 20 times per second, every single day, for years. That's not a metaphor. That's Tuesday for a woodpecker. A woodpecker's beak hits wood at about 6 to 7 meters per second. That's faster than most car crashes in a parking lot. And the force it creates? Around 1,000 to 1,500 G-force per impact. To put that in terms, you can feel an NFL player gets a concussion somewhere around 95 to 100 G-force. The woodpecker hits 10 to 15 times that, thousands of times a day. So either woodpeckers are secretly suffering in silence, or evolution built something extraordinary inside that little skull. Here's the misconception most people carry. Oh, they have really thick skulls. That's it. That's the whole story. But that's like saying a car crash is fine because the bumper is freshly painted. Thickness alone doesn't soak up shock. It just passes the force along, straight to the brain. A thick wall of solid bone would actually make things worse because hard surfaces send vibrations straight through without slowing them down at all. Think of the difference between catching a baseball with a bare hand versus a padded glove. Same ball, same speed, completely different result. The real secret isn't thickness, it's geometry, timing, and tissue most people have never heard of. There are actually 4 separate systems working together inside that small head. 4, and one of them involves the woodpecker's tongue, which is one of the strangest things in the entire animal kingdom. Let's go through all 4. The first one is the bone structure inside the beak itself. It isn't just hard on the outside. The inner bone is spongy and interlocking like the crumple-zones built into the front of a car. When a car hits something, the front crumples on purpose to soak up the hit before it reaches the driver. The woodpecker's beak does the same thing. It compresses slightly so the force doesn't travel straight back to the brain. But here's the part that's easy to miss. The upper beak is slightly longer than the lower beak. That tiny difference matters a lot. It means when the beak hits wood, the force is pushed downward and away from the brain instead of straight back into it. That asymmetry isn't a flaw in the design. It is the design, but that only handles part of the force. Here's where it gets crazy. The second system is the hyoid bone. Most birds have a small hyoid, and that's the bone that holds the tongue in place at the bottom of the mouth. But a woodpecker's hyoid is completely different. It wraps almost all the way around the skull, looping behind it like a coil spring or a seatbelt strapped around the outside of the brain. It acts like a built-in suspension system, soaking up vibrations before they reach the brain tissue. And here's the part that makes people rewind. The woodpecker's tongue doesn't just sit in the mouth, it loops around the back of the skull, and in some woodpecker species, it actually passes through the eye socket on one side. Yes, really, the tongue is a shock absorber. That might be the most surprising anatomy hiding in any bird you've ever seen at a feeder, but even that doesn't fully explain the timing piece. The third system is about how the brain fits in the skull. A human brain floats in a liquid called cerebrospinal fluid, basically a bath of protective fluid that surrounds the brain. That liquid lets the brain slosh back and forth when your head gets hit, and that sloshing is what tears tiny connections inside the brain and causes a concussion. A woodpecker's brain fits much more tightly in its skull. Less room to slosh, less spinning, less damage. Think of it like packing an egg loosely in a box versus wrapping it tightly in padding. Drop both boxes from the same height and only one egg survives. Less cushion, it turns out, is sometimes more protection. That's counterintuitive, but it's measurable and real. You're probably thinking, okay, so it's basically armored, but actually that's not the weird part. The fourth system is the blink. Woodpeckers have a special membrane called a nictitating membrane. Think of it as a second eyelid that closes sideways. Just before each strike, this membrane snaps shut over the eye. It holds the eyeball firmly in place and stops it from And this is not an exaggeration, literally popping out from the force every single strike. A protective blink, 20 times per second, that's 4 completely separate systems: spongy bone, the wrapped tongue bone, tight brain fit, and the fast-closing membrane, all firing together in the fraction of a second it takes to hit a tree. No single system does the job alone. Take anyone away and the whole thing falls apart. Now here's what makes this hit different. Take a sparrow or a starling flying into a window at roughly the same speed. Brain damage, death. It happens so often there are entire organizations dedicated to stopping birds from flying into glass. Same force, completely different outcome. The woodpecker isn't bigger or tougher. It's built differently at every single level, from the bone structure of its beak to the way its tongue wraps around the outside of its skull. That's not luck. That's millions of years of precise engineering, which is exactly why NASA researchers, military scientists, and helmet designers started taking very close notes. Here's where this gets personal. Woodpeckers have been drilling into trees for somewhere around 25 million years. Based on the fossil record, though researchers debate the exact timeline. Picture a forest before any humans existed. No chainsaws, no power tools, no noise. Just ancient trees with insects living deep inside the bark. Every other bird was hunting in open air, catching bugs in flight, picking things off leaves, finding food the easy way. The woodpecker went the other direction, into the wood. That meant going somewhere no other bird could follow. No competition for food. An unlimited supply of insects hiding where nothing else could reach them. And this is the key part, it only worked if the bird could survive the drilling. Therefore, evolution had tens of millions of years to keep improving the design, fixing every weak point, refining every system until the skull became something that researchers today call one of the most efficient impact-absorbing structures in all of biology. It didn't just survive the challenge, it turned the challenge into its greatest advantage. Here's the part that makes this more than just a nature fact. The woodpecker's design is being copied and used right now in things you may have already touched today. Military helmets. Engineers are studying the hyoid's wrapping structure to build better suspension layers inside combat helmets so the brain sits more protected from blast waves. Bike helmets. The spongy interlocking bone inside the beak inspired multi-layer foam designs that crush in sequence rather than all at once. Flight recorder black boxes. The outer shell geometry echoes the woodpecker's beak offset, helping the box survive crash forces without crushing what's inside. Anti-vibration drill bits used in surgery and construction use damping structures based on how the hyoid absorbs repeated impacts. The NFL concussion research teams have directly studied the woodpecker's tight brain-to-skull fit ratio as a model for understanding what protects a human brain and what doesn't. Smartphone cases, some drop protection designs use layered crumple zones that work on the same principle as the beak's spongy bone. Earthquake engineering for large buildings uses shock absorbers inspired by the same stacked system approach. Boxing headgear designers have looked at the hyoid wrap concept when rethinking how padding should be arranged. Even body armor padding uses layered compression responses that mirror how the woodpecker's 4 systems fire in sequence. The black box on your last flight may owe its survival rating to a bird you've ignored at a feeder. That's not a stretch. That's a documented research direction. But here's the honest version. This isn't perfect immunity. Woodpeckers do build up a protein in their brains called tau, the same protein that builds up in human brains with CTE, which is the brain disease found in football players and boxers. One current theory is that in woodpeckers, the tau might actually help clear damage rather than cause it, but that is actively debated among researchers and not settled science. What's also true is that woodpeckers stop. They rest. They don't drill for 24 hours straight. The engineering systems are real and peer-reviewed and not in question, but even the best biological solution in nature has limits. Evolution finds the best available answer, not a perfect one. Woodpeckers don't have thick skulls. They have 4 interlocking systems that took 25 million years to build, and engineers are still reverse engineering them today. That knocking in the trees isn't just a bird looking for lunch. It's the most advanced impact protection system biology has ever produced. Live and in your backyard.